everyone, and welcome to Inside Indy. There is a movement sweeping the country, and I know you've heard about it in the news and on the newscasts, on television and on social media. It is the Time's Up movement. Here to talk about that is Lyn Asbury, and you are the founder of Jubilee Spree.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
To Inside Indy. And begin by telling us what Jubilee Spree is.
Jubilee Spree is an organization that works with girls and women, and the goal is to help their spiritual life, number one, and second, to get them trained to a point of entrepreneurship where we can sell their goods in the United States. But all along the way, we do counseling with the women and the girls on a number of issues, and how to avoid being raped or abused is a big part of that.
Now tell us about your trips to Kenya and how long you've been doing this. Give us a little history on this whole Jubilee Spree movement. Okay. It's its own movement, right?
It is. Yeah. I have been there 34 times.
Wow.
I started going before I was even a Christ follower, which was several years ago. But every time it's different. I just got back on Thanksgiving, for example, and my goal in that trip was to bring back the goods that the artisan women make, so that we could get them into the product stream in time for Christmas. Oh, nice. But I never, ever go without doing teaching. And it could be the armor of God, it might be God's promises, whatever I feel is appropriate at that time.
Okay, so what's the primary religion in Kenya? Is it
they will tell you, 90% of them will tell you that they are Christian. But the interesting thing about that is that there's such a holdover from having the witch doctors. There is animism, and some of the witch doctoring sometimes sort of rolled into the way Christianity has evolved on the continent.
So how does what's going on here compare to some of the things that are going on in Kenya?
Well, I hope I don't shock you when I tell you about some of the things that have been happening over the years that I've gone there. And they're just now coming to light because technology is enabling a better communication about what's happening.
Facebook telling on everybody.
Absolutely. And they may not have a computer, but they'll figure out how to get the word known.
That's right.
But the cases there are very extreme and often involve mache cutting off of limbs.
What is that occurring from? They just do that for?
They just do it because they can, and there is no repercussion. And that's
a part of the abuse, is what you're saying?
Yes, definitely. Any extreme, there are many, many extremes that we see all the time. And it's very hard because a couple of things. What we are trying to do is let the girls and the women that this happens to know that this is not okay. It's not culturally okay, but they feel like they don't have the power to do anything about it, which they don't.
I think some of them aren't even aware that it's not okay.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So the more extreme, the more it can be talked about. So we have to tread very carefully on cultural issues because this has been happening since the beginning of time on the continent, I imagine.
So how do you manage when you're there? I mean, because if they look at women that way, when you show up, are you like, no way, Jose, I'm gonna, because obviously your mindset is totally different.
I have the best advantage of all. I'm an old, white-haired woman, and they respect that in their culture. So I can say things to them that I would never be able to say if I were 20 years younger. So that's an advantage for me. It doesn't mean that they will change anything. I'll give you an example. We had a girl gang raped in one of the villages, and I had just had it up to here, and the girl's parents were livid, and I thought this is the right time to get to the chief of that village. Yes, they do still have chiefs in the tribes. And I convinced her to go ahead and take it to court and that her costs would be covered. So the chief did, and the boys, the three boy men, were convicted, and they got 15-year sentences. First time any of us had ever seen that happen.
Wow.
So we do a little bit at a time, and we pick the alliances that will help us get closer to doing more. Does that make sense?
Wow, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in shock even hearing that you were able to accomplish that.
I know.
Wow, Judge Judy over in Kenya.
I know.
You're doing your thing.
Well, it happened to be that the new chief was a female chief, also unheard of. So we had some advantages going there that God had set up for us, and we took advantage of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is your advice, I guess, since you've been through so much there? What's your message to people here in America? Because let me say this, and one of my fears is that what is happening there, if we don't stop it, can infiltrate here to make matters worse. But I think people think, well, we're okay and we don't have to worry about that over there.
Well, it goes along with what's happening in the culture, because even if we look at what's on TV these days and how much more graphic it is, and we look at all kinds of violence, including sexual violence, on TV. So it's such a cultural issue for us, it's almost too big to even think about. Personally, I can tell you it's much easier for me to deal one-on-one with a girl in Kenya than it would be to deal one-on-one with a girl here. I can give a girl here some guidance, but until her mom and her family and those values are starting to be built into our culture, it's going to be an uphill climb. Personal opinion.
Okay. I'm going to step away a little bit from the Time's Up issue. I know you brought some items here
Yes.
on the set with us. So tell us what you brought and what these things are.
Okay. I picked up just a few of the things that I love, and I'm wearing a couple of them. This is called a kitenga cloth.
A kitenga.
A kitenga. It's a typical African cloth.
Okay.
And our women artisans make them. We work with over 500 women to teach them how to make products that will be sellable in the U.S. market, because they need the money desperately. When I look at an item that a woman wants me to buy from her, I literally look like this and go like this to see that she realizes there has to be quality.
Oh, okay.
Then when I very graphically reach down into my pocket and pull the money out, her eyes brighten, because now she realizes tonight my kids are going to get fish, or they're going to get protein for a change. So these are all part of an economic empowerment program for the women we work with. And every cent that we earn, all that we do is from a volunteer basis. Wow. So bags like this, which are just incredible. I mean, isn't that cool?
Wow, nice.
I
and
know.
so somebody just, we go into Ross Dress for Less, we see something like a machine probably made it, but you're saying the ladies made this.
Yes, they actually work with these fibers. This is a fiber,
cool?
sisal, which is grown in huge plants, and they just strip it off and dry it in the sun, and then this is colored by mud, believe it or not.
Wow.
And this is clay, so it's all very natural.
Wow,
and
isn't that
then
cool? And the thing about something like this in the U.S., if you marketed it that way,
Yes.
I mean, this line was made this way,
Yes.
it would be like a multi-billion-dollar company.
Exactly.
Because, it's back to earth and nature,
Yes,
and I
that's
eat,
true.
pure food, and now I wear, I
pure
carry
bag,
pure
yeah.
makeup and bags, yeah. So
That's
there you go.
another example of it, only just a teeny tiny sling bag that you might wear
Coach,
if you're going out at night.
eat your heart out. See, she got her little symbol there.
That's absolutely.
huge. That's
Yeah,
huge. That'd be
I
a whole
know.
new line.
Yes.
Like Tommy Hilfiger,
Yes. You sound like a product development person.
Yeah, kind of. I do that a little bit here.
Well, this is my kitenga. I explained to you, I'm not going to rip it off because there's a mic under there. I'll show you
Okay.
this one. But they make these by hand. And the cool thing about this is you can wear it, like I'm wearing it, or you can undo it, like I have for that black one, and use it for a cloth or a covering for a table. Or
nice.
if you
Okay.
have a baby, you just sling it over your back and put your baby in the back and walk around. I'm always afraid to even try that one, but they do it all the time. So these are hand-done kitenga.
Can I touch that? 'Cause I just wanna- Okay, so where does the fabric come from? Because I would think like this is cotton. What do they use?
They can get the threads in Nairobi.
Okay.
We used to help them source, and we've got them pretty well sourced because many of them work in the villages, and we have to get the raw goods to them.
Okay.
But even this, it hasn't always been that the things they made were beautifully done. We have worked so hard on the quality aspect.
Nice, very
this
nice.
is just, it's a 2-zip bag, and you wear it across here, and you can put your credit card and your car keys and your phone, and there
Okay.
you go. $12, if you can believe that.
Okay.
We sell
Very
a ton
cool,
of
very
those.
cool.
And then one thing we do, we worked a lot with the Maasai tribe, and we got them to change the way that they make their closures so Americans like them better.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
see, that's
this.
another thing, Americanizing
Okay,
it.
now
Yeah,
can you
I'm
walk
with
around with this?
Nice, nice.
It's actually, imagine it for a picnic. Imagine it having some firewood in it by your fireplace.
Ah, nice,
Or
okay.
putting your papers in them or your books by where you do your reading. Isn't this great?
Wow, I would think even some of the store
course.
chains like Home Goods and places like that, or
Yeah.
what is it called, where they eat the breakfast food and
Yes,
they always have stuff there.
sure.
I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that being there as well. You know, you said something about economically empowering the women.
Yes, yes.
And it sounds like to me, based on what you're saying, what's happening in Kenya and what's happening in here, if we can keep anybody, whether male or female, economically oppressed, then we can rule over them. Would you say? I mean, is that what you? Because this seems to be the solution. If I can get money in their hands, that empowers them.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, and I think that's what I was referring to earlier when part of the problems now with and why women haven't come out, because they have the dream of whatever it is that they were hoping to achieve wherever they were working. And once you take that dream away and some guy gets involved in abusing you now, even if it's only verbally, then you start thinking about how do I protect myself? And many times the wrong decision is made. You just keep your mouth shut, and that isn't how we protect ourselves.
Right. Why? And this is a loaded question, and we've only got about a minute left, and maybe even two.
Okay.
Why? You've seen the men there. You've seen the men here. Why do that? Why do you have to hurt somebody to get what you want? Why? Even if you have the power, because I see on Facebook, men will argue, well, women maybe don't make as much on the dollar because they don't have the strength. But just because you got the advantage doesn't mean you have to take it.
Exactly.
Kids are,
Yeah.
I mean, they're younger. They're not as smart, but we don't beat them up, and some people do.
Right.
So what do you see the reason there and the reason here why somebody wants to do that? What's your gut?
Well, my gut is that I wish I had an answer, but I don't have a clue. And I've asked that same question over and over. I prayed about it for hours and hours on end. And all I can think is that really it's Cain and Abel. Isn't it really?
Preach, girl.
Okay, well, I'm preaching then. Because I don't know that we will have that answer. God knows why. He knows why these things are happening and they're being rolled out just at this time. We don't know that. And I don't think we'll know till we see them.
Okay. If people want to buy these things, get in contact with you, Lyn, how do they do that?
They can give a call to 317-490-7239.
Okay, sounds good to me. Lyn Asbury, who is the founder of Jubilee Spree, thanks so much for coming in and
thank you for
sharing
having
your
me again.
Kenyan experiences with us.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll be back with more here on Inside Indy after this.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. It's a new year, which means we have new tax reform, new codes, everything's changed, and we have an expert in the studio who's going to help us get through it all. He is the author of Today's Guide to Retirement Planning, and he is David Hays, the author of the book co-authored with Doug Hughes.
That's right.
Okay, welcome to Inside Indy.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm going to say right off the bat, I don't know anything about taxes.
Well, we say I'm glad because that gives me a job.
There
Otherwise,
you
yeah,
go.
right. So we, Yeah, we're excited about the new tax law. We've been getting ready for quite some time, and now it's here. So we've been excited about the planning opportunities. We're glad it wasn't retroactive for 2017. It would have made it very complicated.
Yes, I was wondering, were they trying to do that initially?
Initially, but they just ran out of time. So on December 22nd, when it was actually signed into law, there just was no way, shape, or form that they could have made it retroactive. Okay. According to recent studies, nearly $4,000 a year is expected, on average, back into a family's pocketbooks. So it can be pretty substantial.
Okay. Question number 2, doubling the standard deduction.
Yeah, so they basically doubled the standard deduction. And what that means is previously you would itemize or take a standard deduction. And that's still the case, but previously we would add up all of the expenses like your taxes, your state taxes, maybe the license plates on your car, interest on the mortgage on your home, and some other things. And if that all added up to a bigger number than the standard deduction, then you itemized your deductions. That's still the same. But by doubling the standard deduction, that's going to eliminate most itemized returns. In fact, it's being said that only 16% of returns filed in 2018 will actually itemize their returns. So it is somewhat of a simplification act, as well as hopefully money in people's pockets as well.
Okay. What about people who own small businesses?
Yeah, that's where the big windfall is. And most jobs are actually from small businesses. So there's a 20% tax credit, or a deduction, I should say, right against the earnings of those pass-through entities. Now, a pass-through entity is usually owned by a person or maybe a couple of people. And that could be an S corporation, an LLC, where the owner takes distributions. But if I'm receiving a 20% deduction on those earnings, and it's actually capped if you're married filing jointly a little more than $300,000. So these aren't big companies, these are small companies. This could be your lawn care business, your snow plowing business, a small HVAC company. And I think it's going to really be beneficial for those folks because they can now maybe give raises to the employees that you have needed a raise for quite some time. Maybe they go out and invest in more equipment, or they simply have more money to spend. And once again, that goes back to the overall economic expansion.
Wow, okay. What about other deductions? And let's talk about those: mortgage interest, charitable contributions, expenses.
They were very surgical in how they did this. Remember, this was passed under what's called budget reconciliation. So every time we received something, we had to give something back. So as they went through and looked at where they could pick apart some smaller populations of people, they started limiting mortgage interest as an example. If you have a mortgage that's over $750,000, then that's the most that you can deduct the interest on your tax returns. If you had a mortgage higher than that, before it was signed into law, you're grandfathered. So obviously that's the higher end homes. And there are some other limitations as well, but for the most part, they have surgically went in and said this small pocket of people that doesn't affect the masses, let's change it on them.
Okay, so if you own a home that's $250,000,
you're fine.
It's the same.
Same.
Oh, okay. And I thought initially it was something like if you owned your home like for the last, it only affected newer homes. But no, now it didn't happen that way.
So if you have a really large mortgage, then you were grandfathered. So that would be $1 million mortgage, let's say. You no longer can deduct the interest on your home equity loans. But going forward, if you have a mortgage bigger than $750,000, you can only deduct the interest up to $750,000. So that's the new law. Now, you might be thinking about when you sell your home and capitalizing gains. That rule is still the same. You do not have to pay tax on the gain of your personal residence as long as you lived there 2 of the last 5 years, and it doesn't have to be contiguous.
Okay. Interest on student loans.
Yeah, still deductible, no problem there. That one passed through. We had the child tax credit that was boned up and continues to be part of a good tax plan as well. They did eliminate personal exemptions. So if you, prior to this coming year, whether you took a standard deduction or you had itemized deductions, each member of your home would get a personal exemption. And that was about $4,000. So that could be pretty significant if you had a family of 4 or 5 people. And they would limit the number of personal exemptions you could have. So that was a takeaway. But yet giving you the double standard deduction should more than compensate you for that.
Okay. So what deductions are we losing?
Yeah, some that aren't used very often, like theft and casualty losses. You had a big storm that blew down your barn, or you had someone steal from you. You could deduct those things. Again, doesn't affect.
You could deduct things people steal from you.
Yeah. You have to file a police report and go through some things like that.
Is there like an amount that at that time that you could, like, was it a limit or a minimal amount?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it had to go past what they call a miscellaneous deduction amount, which was 2% of your AGI. But forget about it because you can't do it anymore.
Okay, but well, I had something happen.
You want to go back and amend and overturn? You maybe still can.
Well, actually, but for last year though, it would still be okay though.
Yeah,
right?
you could go back and sure, for 2017, absolutely. Other things like tax preparation fees, investment advisory fees that you pay for managed accounts, no longer deductible. In the past, those were always deductible.
Wow.
So really limiting the number of itemized deductions, reducing the number of people that will be itemizing, and then hopefully putting a little more money back in people's pockets.
Okay. Trump has said he wants tax reform to help middle-class families. What changes have been made to help American families?
Yeah, there's been actually, in my opinion, quite a few. I think the big deal is the tax brackets. They lowered the tax brackets, but also they've widened some of the ranges that the tax brackets are. For instance, the 24% tax bracket will go all the way up to over $300,000 if you're married filing a joint return. That's pretty substantial. In the past, that same family would have paid easily 28, 33, 35, maybe even 39.6% on that income. So by doing that, it gives folks a lot of opportunity to do some planning, because here's the math behind all of this. At some point, taxes will have to go up. And the reason is because we have too many promises that we've made to the American people, Social Security, Medicare, just to mention a few. In fact, there's a gentleman by the name of David Walker back in 2011 that was on a national radio program, and he was talking about how taxes would have to double for us to simply pay for the things that we've already promised. And he started taking calls about why this might be, and he asked for the callers to call in. And he said it was a 4-letter word. Callers would call in, they would say things like wars, kids, all kinds of different 4-letter words. Finally, he stopped and said, listen, folks, it's math. M-A-T-H, math. Now, you might say, okay, there's a lot of people out there that are gloom and doomers. David Walker, former comptroller of the United States of America, served both under Clinton and Bush 1. He knows more about the fiscal health than anybody else in America. So for the next few years, up until January 1 of 2016, 2026, I should say, 2016 was a couple of years ago, we have a really good opportunity to pay taxes on money that you maybe have not paid the taxes on yet, and that's retirement accounts. Retirement accounts are a place where everyone saves money, and they do it on a pre-tax basis. So here's the deal we've made. You can put this money away pre-tax at a known tax rate today, 15% or 12%, 10%, whatever it might be, your tax rate, to then take it out later in life at an unknown tax rate. And if tax rates are going to be higher in the future, then why would you do that? So we've been convincing people to put money away in things such as Roth 401ks, Roth IRAs, where you pay tax on the seed money, but not the harvest, versus paying taxes on the harvest, not the seed. Now, there's an opportunity to do what's called Roth Conversions. Whether it's a 401k plan, you can convert money from taxable to tax-free, pay off those taxes now at maybe lower rates than you're ever going to see in your lifetime. So we really see this as an opportunity for middle Americans to pay off that mortgage that's against their retirement accounts. I always tell people, if you have $100,000 in a retirement account, it's not worth $100,000, because if you went and took it all out, you have to pay taxes on all that money. It's worth about $65,000.
Okay.
So if we're able to pay taxes off now at a much lower rate, then that's going to keep you from being in a really, really tough situation, in my opinion, down the road, when taxes will have to go up to simply pay for the things we've already promised.
Okay. Expanded child tax credit.
Yeah, this was one that Senator Rubio actually pushed really hard, and he was the reason that the tax reform went through, because we gave him this. A $2,000 child tax credit is back on the table, and they've expanded that. So, you do still get some benefit from a tax perspective by having children.
Okay.
You're never more broke than the day after you have your first child, so thank goodness they gave us a little bit of something.
Okay.
And the older your kids get, the more broke you become. I have a 17-year-old son. He leaves the lights on in the house, eats everything. They're very expensive.
Okay.
So you need the credit.
Okay. The 529 savings plans expanded. That's the college
That
savings
is,
plan,
yeah.
right?
And that was kind of an interesting thing that came out of left field for me. Now you can use the 529 plan for elementary school, junior high, high school, as long as it's a private school where you're paying out of pocket. The 529 plan, especially here in the state of Indiana, is a fantastic tool. When you make a contribution to a 529 plan, whether it's your own child, grandchild, a friend, a nephew, it doesn't make any difference. You receive a 20% tax credit. That's real money back in your pocket up to a $5,000 contribution. So I put $5,000 in, I receive $1,000 cash back. That's 20%. That's better return than you can get anywhere.
Wow.
That is now available to be spent not just on college, which they did expand the uses at the college level, but also in secondary school and others as well. You can actually open up I have many clients that have opened up 529 plans with no kids, no grandkids, because they expected at some point to have those. And let's say that you opened one up 10 years prior to having your first child. Well, now you've benefited from that continued tax-free growth. You've gotten many, many tax credits over those years. Then when they're in elementary school, if you're sending them to a private school, you've actually benefited from the growth of that and can use it. It's a great tool.
Okay, well, we're out of time, David. Very quickly about the tax brackets. I know the income ranges and the
Sure.
that you have listed.
Yeah, before, basically I'll do married filing joint returns, but from 0 to just under $20,000 is 10%. You're now at 12%, up to $77,000, which is a cheap cost of money.
Okay.
22%, 24, 32, 35, and then all the way up to 37% for folks making over $600,000.
Okay, we don't even have to talk about it with nobody in here. It makes sense. You do, though,
Yeah,
David.
no, come on.
Thank you so much for joining us, David
Yeah,
Hays.
take my book. That's a gift from me to you.
Thank you so much. His book, Today's Guide to Retirement Planning. Thanks so much for coming on and enlightening us about the new tax laws.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
If you or a parent or a grandparent has a house that they are looking to sell, please consider selling it to Habitat for Missions. We'll provide a cash offer, no responsibility to fix the place up before it can be sold. Leave all of that to us and put our volunteers to work there, fix it up, renovate it, restore it, and sell it with the idea of donating 90% of the profit to Christian Mission.
I sold my house to Habitat for Missions.
We sold our house to Habitat for Missions.
Just remember, 90% of the house sale profit goes to Christian ministries. Sell your house to Habitat for Missions and help us change our world.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.